Test. Test.
See, just like she said.
Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? It's fucking working. Why isn't it working? Test. 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 F. The hell? It was working before.
Make sure you're not muted.
I'm not.
No, make sure the computer isn't muted.
It's not. See, I don't know what the hell. Why is this happening? It was working earlier.
Yeah.
See, look, watch. You can hear the Windows sound, but why?
So is everything covered up correctly here?
Should be.
She said that there's only 3 microphones, is that correct?
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test.
Joanne should ask Chiarella to do that.
It was working earlier. I truly don't understand what's happening right now.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this community meeting. The meeting has been called to order at 6:06. I really want to thank everyone for their participation tonight. The purpose of this meeting is for us to present to you the proposed changes to the architectural control policies and ask for your feedback into those changes. I'm Joanne Jensen. I'm the general manager, and joining me as a presenter this evening is Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel is the chair of the Architectural Control Committee, and we have many of the members of that committee with us this evening. They're all in the front, and they're going to rely on you not to throw anything.
Bodyguards.
First, we're going to share a little bit of background information about the Architectural Control Committee, and then we'll review the proposed changes. Our presentation is relatively short, and most of the meeting will be dedicated to your questions and comments. When we get to that point, when we're done with our slides, we'll ask members that would like to speak to come up to the podium and start their comment by giving their name and their property address. So all members have a right to comment, and we'll diligently take your notes. As a result of this meeting tonight, we will be sharing the feedback with the board of directors, and we may, of course, amend some of the proposed changes to reflect your input into this process. So that's how we're going to do things tonight. Before we dive in, are there any questions about the format of the meeting? Okay, seeing none, we'll dive right in. So who is the Architectural Control Committee? Well, members are elected every year to serve a 3-year term. And so when you get your ballot in September, you should look, in addition to voting for board members, you're also able to vote for members of the Architectural Control Committee and members of the Nominations and Elections Committee. If there are not enough elected members for those committees, the board of directors may appoint members. And so we have a mix of both elected and appointed members in our Architectural Control Committee this year. The ACC is a very hardworking committee, especially during this busy season for builders. They meet twice a month on the first and third Thursdays. One of those meetings is at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it takes place via Zoom, so you can join from wherever you are, drinking your coffee. And the other meeting takes place at 6 or 6:30? 6 o'clock. And that meeting is held in person. And often the in-person meetings for the Architectural Control Committee are very helpful because you can look at plans and gather around and really have good conversations. So both different venues are real helpful. I think the first Thursday is the 9 a.m.
This
one.
coming one will be at the barn here.
Yeah, so the and the
Yeah.
yeah. So the purpose of the ACC committee is to ensure the highest possible and this is taken right out of our governing documents, the highest possible degree of harmony between natural and man-made systems, and that continued development does not unduly diminish the quality and aesthetic integrity of both the natural and built environments. So a very lofty purpose statement for the ACC. Primary objectives are also given here. First, to create and maintain an aesthetically desirable community by encouraging sensitive architectural design of the individual residences, recreation retreats, condominiums, commercial structures, and related facilities. To encourage maximum creative architectural response to each individual site, as well as to the area and region. And finally, to protect individual property owners from the results of indiscriminate construction by others that would adversely affect surrounding property values and the general aesthetic quality of Sudden Valley. The most commonly asked question about governance in this area of architectural control is given there on the slide. Why do I have to get SVCA's permission when I already have a permit from the county? And the answer is also pretty simple. SVCA's restrictive covenants, and those are attached to the deed of every property here in the valley. Those restrictive covenants require owners to obtain ACC approval before beginning construction or external alteration. So if you have a current home that you're looking to change in any way, you also need permission. Those restrictive covenants, as I said, are legal requirements and they are attached to your deed. It's also important to remember that SVCA's requirements are in addition to the requirements imposed by Whatcom County. So it is possible, and in many cases, it is true that SVCA's restrictions are more restrictive than those of the county. And that's how the Homeowners Association works to ensure that we have, that we meet the objective and the purpose that we stated earlier. For those of you who don't know, the Architectural Control Policies document lists all of the rules that govern both new construction and exterior changes to existing properties. And you can get that document on our website, which is suddenvalley.com, on the very important page called Residence Resources. Just about everything you'd ever need is on that page. You have to keep scrolling. It's an old-fashioned website, but it's all there. One change to the AC policies was approved by the Board of Directors on May 9th and became effective immediately. And that has to do with the timing of Sudden Valley permits for new construction. That was important because the new definition of our different extensions goes along with the new fees and fines that were approved by the Board of Directors in April on the 11th. But tonight, we're going to talk about additional changes to those AC policies that are being considered. And these additional changes, right now, we're proposing they would become effective on January 1st, 2025. And the reason for the delay between approving them and having them become effective is so that people who are in the middle of designing a new project aren't surprised, so that they're not investing money in developing a project that fits with the current policies and then suddenly have to spend more money to become compliant with the changes that are approved. So there will be plenty of time for people to get used to the new requirements. So now what are the changes that are being considered? Well, after this meeting, we'll go ahead and post to the website the actual document, the AC policies document that has all of the red line markings in it. And if you've never seen a document with revisions, it looks really messy and chaotic, but it'll be there for anyone who wants to see. And the way it's visible is there's a line through anything that we're suggesting to delete. And then the new text that we might be adding will be in a different color. And we'll post that tomorrow morning when we get into the office. But the substantive changes, the big policy changes that are in that document are all listed here, and there's just a few. The first is to reduce the maximum allowed driveway slope from 25% to 20%, dependent on the site. And we'll get into more, but I'm just reviewing all of the changes that we're going to talk to you about tonight. We're also considering a change to the required setbacks. Currently, it's 5 feet on each side. What we're suggesting as a change is that we would ask for a total of 20 feet for the sum of the 2 side setbacks. Now, this requires a little bit of visualization. The front of the house is where the main entryway is, and it typically faces the road that the lot is addressed on. Okay? So you drive up on the road, you look at the house, and that's the front. The side of the house immediately opposite the front is the back, which is why words are so much harder than pictures. The 2 sides that are left are the sides, if that makes any sense. And what we're saying, that was pretty good, huh? Instead of just saying it has to be at least 5 feet away from the property line on this side and at least 5 feet away on this side, what we're saying is some lots might need it to be only 4 feet away on that side, but in that case, on the other side, it would be 16, so that they add up to 20. All right, you may agree, you may disagree, but at least now you understand what that means. The third change that we're proposing is to include driveways in the calculation of the lot coverage. This is really important because one of the things that is true in Sudden Valley is that as more and more lots get developed, people begin to realize where their property lines are, and they seem a lot closer than they did before. So the other thing that we've seen is that people are expecting more and more square footage in a house these days. And so the houses seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, Sudden Valley has a rule regarding how much of the lot you can cover with things like the deck and the house. And we're proposing to count the driveway as coverage. And what that does is actually reduce the footprint of the house overall. Okay? I'm from the East Coast. We do hand waving. Number 4 is to require screening for hot tubs. We've had many complaints over the last 18 months that I've been here about naked people walking through the yards and how it scares children and dogs. So I think that one's self-explanatory. I don't need any hand waving. But the last one is a big one, and we're very interested in hearing your thoughts on this, and that is to require homeowners to maintain the driveway culverts that they install. The association has spent a significant amount of money over the last 18 months on maintaining the culverts, cleaning them, re-ditching, putting armoring in many areas, and all of this is to prepare us and make sure that our drainage can sustain the much heavier rains that we're seeing. As a matter of course, instead of a 50-year rain event, suddenly it's an annual rain event. Driveway culverts are a very big part of this. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it, but we're suggesting that our policy should change from having the association maintain driveway culverts to having individual homeowners responsible for the maintenance of their own driveway culvert. All right, so next up is diving into driveways. Daniel?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're talking about changes to the policies specifically, but the slide that you saw a moment ago, the ACC purposes and objectives, that's really is our guiding principle, and that's what we're thinking about when we make any changes or make any decisions about approving or not approving changes or new construction or exterior alterations. So that is really what we're thinking about. And a lot of our meetings have informed these changes that we're proposing too. Driveways, people are constantly asking for extra parking on the street because they can't get up their driveway. They're afraid to go up their driveway. We actually just had a meeting with somebody who has a very steep driveway that he says he can never use in the winter because once there's ice on it, it's unusable. This may be a bit of a burden on builders, and some lots it may be tough for them to adhere to our new policy, but some lots are less buildable than others, and we will consider variances if we need to. It's not just a given that the driveway can be 25%. They can be dangerous, and we've looked at a lot of new constructions where they're proposing driveways at that height, and we're trying to push back on that just to make this a safer area and less parking on the streets. Just a couple examples of some neighborhoods and what these near my house. There's this house that they never park in the driveway. It's the one on the right there. They just can't park in the driveway, so they've got all the street parking. And then some other examples of driveways that sometimes they go beyond the 25. I'm sure you've all seen those. And this is just one of those policies that it's sort of at the top of our list of things we'd like to look at and try to, there may still be some 25-degree driveways, but we're going to really try to minimize that as much as possible. Yeah, as you can see, even though we do have the 25%, people are still asking for 26 and over percent. This is pretty common, and we do look at these very closely, and we would like to have developers really consider whether it's actually necessary or if they could do something to mitigate that problem. And the drawing on the left is the one that is currently in our policy guide for driveways, our policy, our ACC policies. The one on the right is what we're proposing, the changes. So you can see the percentages and the degrees there that we're hoping to attain.
Yeah.
And this is something that, Sudden Valley is known for their treacherous driveways, the ski slope driveway, I hear people calling some of them. And they're scary. And we have had a few where builders would come and say that it ended up being more than 25. What can we do now? And some of the mitigations have been putting roofed driveways in for more traction, heated driveways, which are exorbitant, about $20,000, I think we found out today, just to put a heated driveway in, and stairs, because you do have to walk up your driveway sometimes, and if the driveway's ice, you cannot. In some places, you can't walk in the yard. Just Sudden Valley, it can be treacherous. So the driveway is one thing we're trying to control a little bit better. And 25 is actually a lot. There are very few neighborhoods where you're allowed to put a 25% slope in your driveway, and this is the county requirements. The county probably is not aware of all the things that go on here in Sudden Valley, so I guess we're just not allowing that anymore. So we're trying to make that change. And there is a link to the county requirements, but ours is, I guess ours would be the same as the counties now. Yeah, and one of the things that shows up a lot in our ACC meetings is people asking for privacy fences because their properties are too close to each other. I guess you could technically have a house that's 10 feet away from your neighbor's house at the eaves, and because of the, because of that, a lot of people are asking for privacy fences. And that's one of the things that informed our decision to propose changing what the setbacks would be for um, yeah, this was the one that Joanne was talking about, where there would be a 20-foot setback total on either side of the house. So right now you could have 5 feet and 5 feet on either side, and Sudden Valley isn't really the kind of neighborhood where you could be that close to a neighbor, and because a lot of the lots are smaller and tougher to build on, the houses are sort of infringing on the neighbor's space. So we're just trying to give it a little more breathing room between properties. And this will be a little bit onerous on some of the builders, but again, our guiding principle is what we have in the ACC purposes and objectives. And all of these changes that we're proposing are informed by that. But yeah, currently, if you want to build any kind of privacy fence or even a dog run between your properties, if you're at the 5 foot limit between your houses, you can't install any kind of fence because you would need another variance to go up to the property line. Currently, you can't build right on the property line. You have to have a 5 foot setback. But if you're already at 5 feet, you can't build any kind of fence or privacy fence or a dog run there. So again, just a little bit more breathing room between the properties. And even though currently it is 5 feet on either side, we are getting a lot of requests for variances on these setbacks. The biggest one, the one that was asking for the most of a variance was rather than 5 feet, they wanted 6 inches. And, it doesn't hurt to ask. But, my committee is very cognizant of the fact that, there's going to be a neighbor there. You know, it, it makes the house fit better on the lot, but there is a neighbor next door, and they're probably not going to want to be that close to new construction. Yeah, this one, this just emphasizes the fact that we're trying to keep the new constructions um, within the guidelines of maintaining Sudden Valley as it is as a green space, and that with these setbacks, it would be easier for us to maintain a green area, and more trees um, will still be on the property. So that it all comes to not infringing on the neighbors' properties with new constructions. Sorry? Sorry. All right, I'm sorry. Still or just now? Uh, oh yeah, this was something that Joanne brought up on the earlier one. Um, the property coverage. Um, that loud enough for you? Yeah, at this point,
requests that are submitted after the rules are approved.
Okay, good. I'm understanding that correctly. So when I look at the driveway culverts thing, my driveway culvert was installed 15 years or 16 years ago by a different homeowner. So I'm wondering if I'm also going to be grandfathered in, just like the developers are. Do the rules apply to folks who have been residents for some time or had nothing to do with the building, but not to the developers who started building a couple of months ago?
Well, I see the context of the question, and I'm happy to hear your input, but the difference about that change is it describes maintenance, not construction. So maintenance is ongoing, and maintenance would apply to all the current structures that are installed. So yes, it would apply to you, even though your culvert was installed 15 years ago.
So, okay, I'm just questioning the rationale because it said part of the rationale was that the homeowners installed the culverts. And that was true of some homeowner sometime, but certainly not me. So I don't know. That's certainly something I object to. I guess I'll just leave it at that. The other thing I'm curious about, I was told in one of my earlier contacts with the ACC, who's been very helpful when I've contacted them, that there is no enforcement means of any of these rules. That if you approve things on paper and you give them the go ahead, that nobody's going out to check and see if they're now building that way. So I want to check to see if that's still accurate, or if so, what is the point of the policies if no one's going to see if they're actually being?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what you were told is incorrect. The general manager is charged with enforcing all of the rules and regulations and policies, and all of the governing covenants of Sudden Valley. And part of our ACC process, and the reason that we charge a fee for submitting a request is because that pays for inspections during the process. So it's not just, okay, go for it, see you later. We have regular inspections to make sure that the builders are meeting the requirements at every stage. So we have an erosion control inspection, and we have a stormwater inspection. We have a final inspection and multiple inspections along the way. The other thing that people may not be aware of is that violations on an established property can be reported or observed. For example, we have a restriction against installing wire fences. Over the last 18 months that I've been here, I've sent out several violations about two property owners who installed or caused to be installed on their property wire fences. It tells me two things. They installed the fence without submitting an exterior alteration request because a wire fence would not be approved. And it also tells me that they didn't read the rules because wire fences are not allowed. So there are two different ways that we do check to make sure that the rules are being followed.
Thank you. That's very helpful. A final question. I just want to be clear about the fencing in the setback of 5 feet. So I have a property next to mine being built. It sounds like it might behoove me if I wanted to put up a privacy fence, that I would do that with my setback before they have a chance perhaps to put in one that is closer, that then would, because if I understand you right, if somebody else builds something closer than 5 feet to the property line, that then makes it too close for me to put a privacy fence, because I won't have the variance, that then I would not be able to build one. Am I understanding that right, or am I just getting confused here?
No, the true requirement is that it's at least 5 feet on each side.
Right.
So we're not loosening the requirement.
Right.
That it's a total of 20. But as Daniel mentioned a couple of times, every site is a little bit different and is considered as a unique entity. So sometimes there are wetlands on the lot that have to be avoided, or there's a lot of rock underneath. And if they move the house a foot to the right, they can avoid $30,000 worth of excavation. Right. And in some situations like that, the ACC may consider the request for a variance, which would mean that they didn't have to comply with the 5-foot setback. Perhaps it could be 4 in order for them to react responsibly with that site. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Thank you.
It doesn't matter whether your neighbor has already put up a fence or what's going on there. The setback is 5 feet from the property line. And that's one of the things where we consider variance. Like if you wanted to build a fence right on that property line, it would come through us. And if it seemed like you really needed that, then yeah, we'd
Great.
agree to that.
So my last question is a big one, and maybe it's not even appropriate for this, but I raised it at the board of directors meeting last week, and that was clearly not appropriate and wasn't useful. And that is in the overall planning for Sudden Valley. And even when you look at the thing you just described there, Daniel, if, you know, a builder's finding that, boy, it's going to be tough for me to meet that here. If I go over here, I can save a lot of money. How is that weighed against the current property owner next door and the rights of that person next door who may, you know, suffer both during the building and after the building if they're allowed a variance? Is that, I know theoretically neighbors get to comment during a building or before the plans, but most of us don't know when plans are being submitted. So
Yeah.
and I'm going to go ahead and sit down because thank
we
you so
actually
much.
do a tour every 2 days before every meeting, and we actually go to the properties and look at these because we do take very seriously that each property is its own, you know, its own situation. So there's not one just blanket rule that applies to everything. Sudden Valley, every lot is completely different. So we just got back from a tour just now. We're looking at properties, but we do look at what these what the fence is going to look like, what a variance would mean to this person, what it would mean to the neighbor. So we take very seriously how any construction or any new construction or exterior alteration will affect the neighbors. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how much sooner it is from the meeting, but Diane? 2 days before each, minimum 2 days before each meeting, our agenda is up there, so you can see which properties we'll be talking about and how may affect you. So check in on the ACC website occasionally. You never know what's going to happen in your neighborhood.
Hi, my name is David Stone. I live at 59 Windward. I have some 3 questions just for clarification. Number one, the coverage said 35% for buildings and accessory structures. What is considered an accessory structure?
I think it's I'd have to look at the policies again, but I think it's anything that you have on your lot, anything that is not just ground. You know,
So a fence is a accessory structure, or
I'm not sure how much square footage that would take up.
right? So anything that would be roofed
Yeah,
would be an accessory structure?
open space. Yeah.
Okay. Then. All right.
It's outlined fairly clearly in the policy manual, but if it's not clear, that's something we could look at too to clarify that. A lot of the changes that we are making in the policies are clarifications. We're not changing it. A lot of people have questions and people aren't aware of some of the policies that are in there.
Sure. Second question regarding setbacks. Does the setback requirement apply to the building or any structure?
Any structure.
And does that include a fence?
Yes.
Okay, so presumably,
Permanent structure.
all right. So presumably, if I had a fence and my neighbor had a fence, we'd have a 10-foot no man's land down between us.
Yeah, theoretically you could. And that's the kind of thing we look at variances for.
Got it.
And, you know, fences, you know, we do discourage them here in Sudden Valley.
Right.
But there are obviously situations where people need a fence.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. You talked about driveway as coverage.
Yeah.
And the purpose being to create more natural area and I assume also decrease runoff from the site.
Yeah, that's part of the calculation.
Okay. Do driveways that would be permeable material, would they count as coverage? Or are we talking just, paved driveways?
I think those would count as coverage because it's not open space. Wouldn't be considered open space.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the architectural committee because I bought my house 28 years ago. At that time, I was told by I'm Jim Beckwith. I'm at 8 Little Strawberry Lane.
Thank you.
When I bought my property 28 years ago, I was told by a by a forest ranger that I was lucky that I lived in this area because we had strong policies that would make sure the trees stayed. That often when you build things, you cut down trees, and that changes the wind shear factor going through. And other trees go, and eventually people no longer have trees. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but to tell you what's happened in my yard, when the neighbor built that house, I lost 5 trees the following year in my yard from the I've since had a tree fall on my, I'll be blown onto my porch. I've had a damage to my a deck, and I've had a hole punched in the roof, all from more and more wind damage year after year. So I don't know if we still have these policies to look at the wind as you're looking at houses being built, how that may affect other trees in the area. But if you haven't, you need to do so because it's not going to happen in my generation, but the next people in here might be living in a flat area of hills, but no trees. Just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, we take the tree situation very seriously. Some constructions require trees that just need to be cut down because they're close to the construction, not actually in the footprint of the house. And we do consider whether the actual construction, digging of the foundation will affect neighbors' trees too. And if there is a tree that will be impacted by the construction, we require that the neighbor allow that. So we need a written permission for that so that none of these, 5 years down the road, there's no danger from the trees that were impacted by the construction.
Is that new policy? Because I was never informed about the trees when that neighbor was built, the house was built.
I don't know what the exact policy is, but those are the kind of things that we look at when we review each one of these.
Hi, I'm Connie Allen. It's 15 Whispering Cedars Court. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. About 5 years ago, we did get architectural committee approval to build a dwelling.
To build what?
A shed. We put a shed in the backyard, and the committee, we gave them 3 sites and they picked one and we put it in. But now with the 20-foot setback, it's too close to the property line. Is there any, I just want to clarify that you're not going to come back and say, well, we've changed the rules, so now you have to move.
We're going to come by and measure your house.
Say you have to move it, because I don't know where else we would
Yeah,
move it to.
Patrick right over there. He's the one that comes and measures.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to look at that. And again, we're not trying to burden, the neighbors. We're trying to, going forward,
Okay.
we're trying to make sure that, people have open space and neighbors have space around them.
Just so that you know, we're kind of a pie-shaped lot, and we don't have the luxury of a 20-foot variance for either side. So just so you know, there'll be some properties that of course, the house is already built, so I get that. So anyway,
And that's the reason why we go to these properties and look to see what's possible. We always work with the owners to see, how can we work with you? What variances can we offer? What suggestions can we offer for you to fit within policies?
My second question is, we also have a hot tub, and again, it was also approved by the committee. It does not face anybody's property. It's kind of at an angle where there's no view to anybody. You're not going to come back and have me put some sort of a fence or something around it, because nobody can see into it anyway.
I mean,
That's what I needed to know.
a situation like that, I mean, if you were starting to get complaints from neighbors, we'd probably look at it. Just
Somebody
because
could figure out a way to look into it, then they could
Yeah.
complain. Okay. Get it. Well, there isn't a way. So then my last question is, I don't know if, I just wanted some clarity if this is an architectural committee question or a SVCA question, but I'm concerned about I live on Lake Louise, and I'm concerned about the overgrown vegetation down on I have an easement in front of my house, and it's overgrown. The grass is taller than I am. And we went to the Firewise meeting a couple weeks ago, and I'm scared to pieces that should a fire start, that it's going to come right up the hill and take over my house. And so I just wanted to know who's responsible for keeping that stuff cropped low so that it doesn't, fuel for the fire. And then also what we can do about, as I was understood, the canopy needs to come up 10 feet from the trees on our lot. So we're going to have to do some construction or some cleanup in order to make that requirement. And my question is, when I do that, I'm not big enough to carry the wood up the hill. So would I be able to come down the easement and haul the limbs and things away? So, and again, I don't know if that's an architectural committee question or a CVA.
Yeah, so it's not an ACC question. It's a maintenance question that you could address to administration.
Okay.
And this is a great learning for everybody. You can simply email front office at suddenvalley.com, just office, OFFICE
Okay.
at suddenvalley.com. And that email address is monitored by all of our administrative staff. So if you have a question, you can send it in there. And if you could just put 2 sentences like you shared today, then we'll forward it to maintenance. They'll look at your specific lot, and then someone will get in touch with you to sort it out.
Yeah, I just want it to be safe. Thank you.
But if homeowners are looking to limb trees, to take off branches that are lower to the ground, there's a whole set of rules about what you can do without permission and where you cross the line and need to get permission. And a lot of that is echoed in our rules and regulations, but it's also a county requirement because we're here in the watershed. And as someone mentioned, the more trees you take off, the more vegetation you remove from a lot, the less protection there is from soil erosion. So it's not just nice to have trees, it's also practical and important to have canopy coverage and vegetation holding the soil in place. And since we're all, on slopes here, it makes a big difference for us. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm being abusive, but you're talking about trees, so I actually have a landscaping question. I live at 101 Grandview Lane. My name is Smith. And there's a sign on Lakeway Boulevard, and it got changed this past week. And it talks about that we're all supposed to be using 0% phosphorus fertilizer because we're in the watershed. So I spent one day and I went to 6 different stores, whether it was a grocery store, a hardware store, Lowe's. Nobody had phosphorus-free fertilizer. So then I called the Whatcom Water and Sewer, and they said, not us, call the Department of Ecology. Called the Department of Ecology. The guy said, great question. It's enforceable. You're breaking the law if you use phosphorus fertilizer. I'm like, I'm happy to behave. Just tell me where to get it. And he goes, no idea. Call Whatcom County Land Trust. So then I called Whatcom County Land Trust, and a couple of days later, I got a message back saying, oh, just go to Hagen. It's all over the place. It's not. So I really just want to know, I'm happy to follow the rules because I actually am, I love our lake. But is there any way that anybody is using, where do you get it? I did.
And she doesn't have, they have a sign that says, that reminds us, Sun Valley. I thought they had.
They did not when I went and asked. And this was about 3 weeks ago that I did this. And then I started looking in people's yards and I'm like, well, nobody's using phosphorus fertilizer. And I'm like, well, I'm sure people would, I would like to think people would buy it to protect where we live if it was available. So if anybody. Did I
Yeah.
I'm sorry to ask that.
Oh, no, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
Sign on Lakeway Boulevard, it had the logo for whoever it was. And this was on like a Tuesday night. The next day, this is my phone call sort of mania.
But did it go away?
No, it changed. The phosphorus that said 0% got bright pink and larger and sort of was screwed to the sign, the lower half, so you can't see whose logo it is anymore.
Huh.
So everybody notice it's at the bottom, sort of in the Geneva neighborhood on the right-hand side coming into the neighborhood.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and post it to the website, and we'll put a link in the e-blast for everyone who's interested.
Hi, I'm Adam Phillips, and I live at 42 Maple Court. And just wanted to go on record as this is passed on as a citizen, definitely supporting these changes. I absolutely agree with the philosophy behind instituting these rules. This is absolutely a big conversation for another time, so I'll be brief, but I would also be very interested in participating in a discussion at some future date per maybe additional incentive for builders to adhere to the rules. And I do recognize some of the things that first gentleman to speak up here was alluding to, just as far as when builders are making mistakes or not knowing the rules or ignoring the rules. I do wonder if some of that could be mitigated by stiffer, I don't know, financial penalties, perhaps a temporary timeout on the building until reparations are made and so forth. I realize we're not talking about that right now, but perhaps at some point in the future. And again, right on the new rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, we did impose stricter fines on builders.
Yeah, I saw that. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a meeting about a month ago about that. But yeah, I mean, I think most of us agree on the ACC purposes and objectives. I mean, these are really strong, very good objectives, and they do guide us in whether our changes to policy are perfect. Maybe they're not, but this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
This is what made us consider those.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Hi, I'm Barbara Michelson Harder, and I live at 172 Polo Park Drive. So my question is just some food for thought, because we're talking about square footage on a lot. Is there anything, and maybe it's already there and I just don't know, is there any stipulation about how high a house can be? Because it's nice to have the footage this way, but we're limited. Sun is limited a lot of places in Sudden Valley. And if you have somebody 3 feet, 3 stories next to you and you're 1 story, it's just, like I said, food for thought.
No, it's something that we talk about in almost every meeting, because a lot of these houses, because the lots are smaller, they're going up. And, we consider each one individually. And if this is a really imposing structure in a neighborhood where the houses are a little lower, we talk to the builders and we try to get them to mitigate that in some way. And we dealt with that just today. We've got some houses that we're looking at that are right at that limit and some that go slightly beyond. So we do look at that and we consider the neighbors. I would like them to be a little lower too. We have a couple definitions for how we define what the height is and what the limits are. I think one of the things that I would like to tweak, even beyond what we've already done for the restrictions, is to look at a clearer way to define height for the houses, because the way it's kind of arcane the way they're defined, that you can have a house that's maybe 20 feet in the front, but in the back is like 4 stories because of the slope of the
Right.
house. So that's kind of We deal with that every couple of weeks in our agendas. And
Yeah.
it's been a problem, and we talked about it just today.
Can you look at cube feet? I mean, you know, can you just say this is a lot? And I don't know what the restrictions are for how big a lot has to be able to build a house on it. We bought a house that was built in 1992, so, and we're happy with it, and it's not that big, but that's all we need. And also within our neighborhood right now, nobody's going to build next to us, although in the future somebody might, because there's a very old house next to us. And I don't know, I'm just thinking, you go square foot, it can't be any more than so many cube feet, or, to limit the size of how big a house can be on a little lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain square footage that it has to be. It can't be a tiny house. And there are the setbacks that you have to adhere to. And there is an open space and a lot coverage percentage that, I mean, this is based on the county. We're trying to be a little bit tighter than the county. But we look at all those things. So there are some limits to what lots can be built on based on what size they are.
Yeah, the square footage thing is great. I was just thinking of
The height.
the height.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wondered,
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Well,
you.
for context, this is the first time in several years that we're proposing to amend these restrictions. And the changes that have been proposed are to make the rules a little bit more restrictive. And it's a reaction to the requests that are coming into the ACC. The houses are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and taller and crazier, I'm a traditionalist, but I'm not on the ACC. I don't get a vote. But um, the ACC is reacting to what they've experienced. And I think it's important to know, for the community to know, that this group spends a huge amount of time. Their meetings can be 2 and 3, sometimes 4 hours in length. In addition to the 2 meetings a month, they spend hours before each meeting driving around and looking at everything and talking to people. And we also have spent hours and hours going through the manual to try and find the discrepancies and make it a little bit clearer and to propose these changes. And in our minds is this idea that it should be a living document that does react to trends in building, to changing weather, to other things that are happening in the world at large. For example, one of the elements that isn't considered a substantive change is, but might be a little bit of a change in there, is that the original restrictions say you can't put a mobile home or what is it called? A modular home. And that makes sense because nobody wants a double wide. However, in the 21st century, the direction of building is to build houses inside warehouse spaces and truck those components to a site. What do they call that? They call that modular building. So, and another thing, we updated the requirements for connections, utility connections, to include the types of pipe that are being used now, right? So the concept that these are living documents, that the community should have a voice, that they should be guided by people who see these things all the time and react to that. I think that that's important. And that's what this committee has started this year, to really spend some additional time, not just complaining about how the regulations don't always work, but actually trying to change some of them. And it's complicated because of our governance structure. So I would like to thank the ACC for putting in the extra time. And there are 2 vacancies. So if you have a lot of free time, are there any other questions or comments? Yes.
We haven't turned anybody down yet.
Love to. Just got out of the pool, which I love. The quiet adult pool, which is what I call it. I'm Diane Rayberger and I live at, oh, this sounds kind of cool, 4 Hollyview Way. I have 4 lots because I moved from a double build situation. Lucky me. Question on these lots that are still available. Any chance that we'll go back to what my previous homeowner was able to do, and that was to buy up lots around her and then only have 1 fee? Is that ever going to come back to Sudden Valley?
We have a defined process for consolidating lots. And you can, if you send a note to office@suddenvalley.com, I'll respond and give you the link to where the process is. But yes, we
And I
absolutely.
can't buy any more because I got a lot with our house, but I would love to see people, or even 2 neighbors going in on one. So
Right,
that
we
we're
can-
not going to get swamped with these gigantic houses.
Right.
It is a trend and the trend's not going away and they really don't fit in here. And that's been my concern when I drive around, you know. Okay, other question. During COVID, we had lots of kids home. It was horrible. We all dealt with it. I mean, I didn't have little kids. I had a big kid and that was pretty horrible too. He snuck out and went camping. The fences that went up did not get vegetation, which I believe is a rule or a covenant.
They didn't get what?
Vegetation is supposed to surround the fencing to sort of camouflage it. Because that's what mine came with and I love it. I'm still seeing a lot of those fences up and I think some of those kids have probably made it to middle school by now. Is there anything in what happened then that can kind of go back to how it was so that the new folks that move here, they go, oh, look, there's fences everywhere. They got a dog, got a kid. We got to put a fence up. Well, that was kind of a COVID thing, in my opinion. A lot went up.
I can say that
Illegally.
we do get a lot of uh, member complaints about illegal fences, and we investigate them. If we come across a fence that looks like it's out of whack, like it doesn't follow the rules and regulations for a fence, we will investigate to see whether it was approved by the ACC. And if it wasn't, we'll then contact the homeowner and let them know that they're in violation and work with them to become compliant. But there are 33,125 lots in Sudden Valley right now, give or take. And we don't have the staff to go around and inspect each one. And it's also kind of invasive.
Oh, it is. And I mean, you'd have to be a sort of nosy neighbor and then you're kind of not being a kind neighbor, but
Right.
it has changed the look.
It certainly
I've
has.
been here 18 years.
And
It's
so
really
if
changed.
there is something in your neighborhood that you would like to draw our attention to, you can do that, and you can do it anonymously. And if you do it not anonymously, if you identify yourself, you are never identified in the process, the follow-up process. And that's been in place for as long as the records go back. So that's just the way it works.
And do realtors ever have any kind of a bulleted piece of paper when they do their walk around and say, and by the way, this, and this is, I don't know, it just feels like there's this missing link in a lot of, sorry if anybody's a realtor here, but you know, like if you don't ask, they might not tell XYZ.
We've had multiple instances of new homeowners come in and ask questions, and then when we tell them the answers, they're upset because their realtors told them something different. Unfortunately, Sudden Valley does not control real estate agents. So other than improving our website, which we're still working on, and making sure that we have the right amount of information in there so that people who are contemplating a purchase within Sudden Valley can get the real story. Other than doing that, I don't know that we can control real estate agents.
Like a press packet for each real estate office, would they just circle file it?
I guess
I'd drive it around for you if somebody wants to write it up. I would.
we
I
can
would
also
love
mail
to
them. but-
Develop these relationships with the realtors, so the people who run the real estate agencies. I know some of them live here. I mean,
Yes,
you know, it's kind of not cool to have an out-of-state person.
or it's even in the advertisements. They advertise that we have private beaches, and we don't.
No,
Exactly.
no.
Yeah.
We have the
Thank
pool,
you.
though. We have a lovely pool.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Carly Lonergan and I live at 8 Sunnyside Lane. This is great timing because I'm a new homeowner in Sudden Valley. I was not promised anything specific. But I have a couple general questions if it's okay. Um, First of all, are the community members allowed to attend just your regular AAC meetings or ACC meetings? Like, is that where
Yeah,
we would?
anybody can come. And they're all on Zoom too.
Oh, okay. All right. So just if we wanted to get a sense for like what the rules are as we go.
Everybody's welcome.
Okay. And then just out of curiosity, are there like visual design guidelines? Just because like I'm exploring my new neighborhood and like, walking and jogging and stuff, and I see like a house that looks like a log cabin right next to a house that's like this big boxy modern huge thing. And I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
actually
mind
lived in one of
anything,
the
but-
original houses built in, I think, 72 or 73. So I think they consider it a chalet style. I've seen maybe 10 or 15 of them in Sudden Valley. There's definitely a difference in designs from back in the day to what they're
Right.
doing now. But yeah, you see a lot of really modern looking houses going up now. And they almost all look the same. So I think there's
Yeah, are there
different trends that the
specific
builders
rules?
know are going to sell better than others.
Okay, so more just design trends, but not like you have to have design A, B, or C.
No, and
Okay.
the only restriction I know, and I think we're keeping it in our policies, that you can't have an A-frame house, which I don't really understand.
Can't?
No.
Oh,
And
because
yet there are two that I'm
yeah,
aware
I
of.
see a lot of them. Oh, they must all be by me. Okay.
That was an original
Restriction.
restriction, and it's still there. I don't know.
Yeah.
We know the reasoning.
It's the only guidance I could give you on that.
If you read the ACC policies, which is good, especially if you have insomnia, you could keep it by our bedside. But if you read it in the beginning, it clearly articulates that we don't want to look like a development where you pick from one of 6 or 8 designs.
Okay.
And then if you're really innovative, you flip it. The intent was to react to each of the individual sites and work within nature and within the aesthetic. So there isn't a lot of design direction other than that. And I think that that's why we have such a variety of home styles here. There are restrictions on the colors that homes can be painted, but even that seems different based on the different architectures that we're seeing now, even when they're staying in that same neutral palette. But that's the extent of the direction for design.
Very interesting.
All meetings of the board and the committee are open to the public.
Okay.
Can attend any one of them. And as Daniel said, if you go to our website, suddenvalley.com, and scroll down the page on the left-hand side towards the bottom, you can click and go to our YouTube channel.
Okay.
All the recordings are posted there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hours and hours of fun. And again, the agendas are posted at least 2 days before the meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm back. Terry Hall, 4 North Summit. All the discussion about the trees and stuff reminded me, I really wanted to ask, is there any consideration when a build plan is put in to the amount of rock that is going to need to be removed to build that house? And the effect both geologically on that site and its neighbors, and also the extraordinary distressing reality of living next to a jackhammer for up to 3 weeks that is literally 10 feet from our house. So is geology any consideration in terms of a build plan? Are there any restrictions in terms of you can only take out so much of the rock on the mountain before we worry about it coming down, or so?
That would be a county thing. It's really important for Sudden Valley to stay out of any discussions regarding engineering or environmental controls. That's the province of the county. What we're doing here is to make sure that the aesthetics are maintained and the principles on which the community was founded. And one comment on fences, we've been talking a lot about fences, and yeah, it does seem silly to have that. I think you called it a no man's land in between. Someone did. That was good idea. But the idea about the fences and the reason they're discouraged is because when you have fenced yards, you keep wildlife from moving freely through the area. And so that's why you'll see along like Whatcom Boulevard, as you drive into town, you'll see that there are fewer and fewer private true privacy enclosures. You'll see broken up fences with some vegetation and then a fence panel and vegetation or passages for the wildlife. And that's an important consideration too, and why the density of the lots is concerning to so many people, because Sudden Valley was meant to be living within a natural environment, and the wildlife sometimes causes problems, but they're a big part of that environment. And so as we think about fences, the free movement of wildlife between their different areas is very important.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest requests we get is for fences and privacy screens. And that's something that we probably work with the owners on the most to make it work and see if it is appropriate for their home. And we do stress the wildlife. That is a really big part of Sudden Valley, and don't want to impede the comings and goings of the deer. And this is their place, and we try to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Even though they do eat my hostas.
Sir?
Hi, my name is David Stein and I live on 10 Wisteria.
Well, you're my neighbor.
What's that?
You're my neighbor.
Yes. I talked to you once a while back, yeah. You said that all the stuff's going to be on the website that we can review. It will be kind of in the nomenclature that will be used if it gets updated. For me, I'm the kind of person, I have questions, but I also don't understand all the nuance. So for me to go in and be able to read it and look through it would kind of be helpful. So I just want to make sure that that's.
It is going to happen. So if you go to the website and you, on the left-hand side, it's very colorful. There's a button that says committees.
Mhm.
Click committees. You'll see a list of the committees. Go to ACC, and there'll be a link at the top of the ACC page that says 2024 proposed changes. And if you click on that, I'll create that new page tomorrow, and I'll post this presentation
Okay.
and the marked up red line document.
Okay.
Okay, so that's after 10 o'clock tomorrow. You should all be able to see it there.
Okay. All right. So if I have questions at that time, I could just maybe reach out to Diane or somebody if I'm not sure about something that I'm reading in those changes.
You can do that, or you can send an email to office@suddenvalley.com and it'll get to the right people.
Okay. All right.
Come up the hill and talk to me.
Okay.
Option,
Will do. Thank you.
certainly. Are there any more comments or questions from the audience? We have some online. Awesome. Let's hear from them. So if
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, hi. Been trying to get through. We've been shut out for all of the meeting, although following it very closely.
Do you have a comment, sir?
Yes, I do. I wanted to find out. Did you need my identification? Do you
Yes,
want
what- your
to
name
find
and
out?
address, sir.
Right. Vijay Singh, 16 Louisview Drive. My comment is, apart from this is a great presentation, a lot of good information. My question is, when the builders, through the building process, if I have someone building right adjacent to me, how much input do I have before, during, especially if I find that there's been encroachment and there's some violations? How do I contact the ACC, and is there anyone who is able to respond to that?
That's a great question. Thank you for raising it. The
Sure.
ACC is responsible for reviewing and approving proposed new construction and alteration requests. They have no role in enforcement. That's the responsibility of the general manager and my staff. So if you believe that there is a violation, or if you have a question about the rules and regulations, you should address an email or to me or to office@suddenvalley.com. You can reach the GM by emailing gm@suddenvalley.com, or you can just call. And if I'm not in a meeting, I will take your call and people transfer them to me all day long. So our office number is 360-734-6430. And you can call between 8 in the morning and 5 at night, and we will make every effort to answer your call. If we're very busy at the front desk, it may go to voicemail, but someone will get back to you. So if you think there's an encroachment on your property or you perceive a violation, you can definitely alert us to that, and we will immediately check it out.
There was just one follow-up to what you just said. What about during the building process or before the building process starts? There were some concerns about the site plan review, which is a public document which one can acquire from the county. And there are some issues in there which have been identified by county planning staff. How do we address that? And if we need to challenge that, how do we go about that?
So I'm sorry I missed that part of your question. You did state it clearly at first, so thank you for reminding me. If you have input into the approval process for new construction, you would need to do that in one of two ways. By again sending an email to office @ and we would forward it to Daniel in his role as chair of the ACC committee, and then he could bring that to the meeting in which the property was being considered for approval, or you could yourself attend the meeting and ask to comment on that property's submission. So that would be two ways that you would have a voice in it.
I understand. Thank you. And how do I know that it's posted, but I've not been able to find anything regarding that particular agenda item. Is that because it's not come to the agenda, or how does one?
Yeah, that could be. I think I've heard a lot of feedback recently about neighbors wanting to be informed. And so that's something that I would perhaps bring forward to the committee as another addition, is that as part of our process, we let the people who live in the surrounding the lot that's proposed for new development, we just make them aware. That might be a courtesy. So anyway, I'm thinking about that, but otherwise you'd have to look. And if you have a question about a specific property, sir, you can just give us the address in the email, and we'll get back to you.
Sure,
Whatever
we'll do that.
information we have.
Thank you.
Are there more folks online? Great. John Gordon, are you there? Can you talk to us from beyond?
Can you hear me? I'm talking. Can you hear me? Oh, because my hand is up?
We can hear you, John. Go ahead.
Well, the reason I did the raised hand is way back when the audio went out for probably 20, 30 minutes. And I could sort of follow along on the screens, but I couldn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden it came back. I don't know what happened.
Well, I apologize for that. We'll take a look at the recording. Perhaps when it's posted, the audio will be in place, but we're actually looking at new audio equipment. It's quite expensive, but it needs to work. So do you have another question, John, or is that you're just trying to let us know?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out some way to let you know that I couldn't hear.
Okay, well, thanks. Anyhow, are there other questions from online? Aaron, are you there?
I am.
You're a little soft, Karen. Can you get closer to your mic?
Is this better?
Yes.
All right, this is Karen Hardesty from 25 Oak Crest Circle, and I have just a couple comments and questions. Number one, thank you for this opportunity. It's great. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate very much the chance to participate by Zoom. Secondly, regarding the driveways, you know how some people are in the culverts. There are people in my community who have installed kind of culverts and then developed kind of a street parking area for them, for their home. But it appears to be on the easement for both the county and Sun Valley. Is that parking area in front of someone's home that they put over their, is that really available to all of us? Because a couple of them are across from certain trail areas. That's a question. Because it's on an easement, is it available to all of us? Sorry about the dog. I'm going to get her right now.
Yeah, no worries. Everyone has a voice in Sudden Valley, even the.
Thank you.
So many people ask for permission to put a parking pad in the right of way. And generally speaking, if it's installed correctly, it does not pose a problem for drainage. And if there's adequate space, it will be approved. However, because it's in the public right of way, it is not an exclusive spot. So you may come home one day to find that someone visiting your neighbor has parked on your parking pad. And
Okay.
that's the luck of the draw.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, number one. And then someday I'd love to talk to you all about trees, but in general, I think all the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things proposed that make sense. I have just one general comment. I really appreciate the fact that we have ACC guidelines. But I reviewed some of them before the meeting, and some of them are very, very specific, like let us know if you're rebuilding your railing and the spindles or whatever they're going to be are going to be a little further different distance apart from one another than they were before. Now that's an incredible detail that I would have thought to let you know, especially if I just purchased a railing from somewhere. I never would have thought to measure and make sure it was the same as it was before, or to ask you guys for, consideration. And so I have really appreciate the concern for safety, maintenance, general aesthetics, and it has never been the responsibility of ACC to deal with compliance with general rules. And with regard to aesthetics, I just want to say that in some places right now, there are worse problems than how far the railing thing, whatever the spindles are from one another, that have to do with compliance issues. And I know that the folks on the ACC committee have tried to let the community know that is not what we do. We are not about compliance. We are not about those things. And that's fair. And I'm just asking that in terms of kind of keeping the big picture in mind, sometimes a detail like some of the things that are covered in ACC compared to some of the things that are covered in general rules, whether that be how many vehicles, whether the roof needs to be maintained, I don't know what it would be. But sometimes those aesthetics are just as important to my home value as some of the others. And that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Heard and understood. Are there others online? Okay. Who's up next? Steve P., if you could speak.
Hello.
Hi, Steve. We can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Let me
I can hear you.
Okay.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is your speaker on?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can hear you. Do you have a question or comment for the group?
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Steve. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Mac is also here. Stephen Mac, we're package deal on 36 Bramble Way. And I wanted to open by just gratitude for the opportunity to be a part of this process, and to validate that I think these changes and these restrictions are good. I think they stand for a lot of what our community stands for, which is that preservation of our environment and the wilderness that we came here seeking, from some of the other areas. I think what I wanted to press upon was why the delay. Why wait until January 1 of next year when we're in the peak of the, rearrangement, building, excavating season right now? As a referee, you're always going to disappoint half of the stadium. And I don't see why waiting is going to, really help anybody out. There's still going to be disappointment. There's still going to be pushback from some of those folks who want to get in under the wire. And I wanted to mention specifically that there's construction going on my street now for the 5th straight year since we moved here. And if these restrictions, specifically the setback on the sides and tighter restrictions on the variances with building were implemented, we could have avoided a near miss on a pretty significant accident last week. Where a tree, Douglas fir, about 5 foot in diameter, came down the wrong direction and almost landed on a resident. And in spite of that being part of an active investigation, there's some shuffling of cards, and that builder is now back out here today, continuing the work. And it worried me to hear earlier in the meeting, when residents did raise concerns about enforcement, you shared that that's your job and that there's a robust set of rules and that there's no concern about accountability. But on the flip side, when we talked about fences, you stated, hey, this takes time. There's, this many thousand homes that I'm dealing with. So if there's room, if the enforcement needs to be more robust, if we need to hold these people more accountable, we shouldn't be waiting to do that. We should be protecting ourselves. There's no reason to put an ambulance at the bottom of the hill when you can build a fence at the top. And that's all I had to share.
And to add to that, this is Steve Pickens, 36 Bramble Way as well. I would like to share that, in discussions today with various parties, I was informed that the green light was given to a separate
So Steve, are you still there? You have cut out.
and it's very, very concerning that this was the place we chose to move for our family and to raise our kids here. And the fact that these approvals are going through at such an alarming rate, and there is so much new construction and these large vehicles, excavators, with contractors who obviously prior to this were not vetted because they did not have L&I insurance. None of their workers had L&I insurance. And that to have the pittance of, oh, well, now we're doing something about it, carry on. That is extremely disconcerting. It is summertime now. There are many small children out here, people who walk their dogs. We have 2 young boys that normally on that day would have been home. And that tree came down across the road and it almost hit my neighbor. And that would have killed him. And I can't imagine if my kids were out playing on the street, that if that tree had come down, what would have happened. And I don't want to talk in hypotheticals. I'm talking about a real tree that came down and could have killed people. And now they're just, because they got a different subcontractor, move on. Wild, in the same breath as saying that the contractor themselves now, because of that incident, is under an L&I investigation. It is beyond me how that could happen. And that was who informed me of that today was Joanne. And she said her hands are tied. And I'm asking who can enforce more stringent rules to stop a rampant build like that? Who's going to do that? Because as it stands right now, the permits are given by the ACC, by the county, by everyone else, and yet no one is holding them accountable except for we have to call L&I because they're not going to self-report. I'm obviously very upset and impassioned about this issue, and I would like to have some answers and some solutions, because right now they're just back at it again, another day. So I'll take my comment and off.
Thanks, Steve and Michaela. I appreciate your comments. The tree incident that Steve described occurred last Thursday, late in the day. Learned about it Friday morning, and we issued a stop work order in the middle of the day when we ascertained that the contractor that had been hired as a sub did not have a license, as Steve mentioned. The stop work order was removed when a new subcontractor who had the appropriate licensing was brought in. Our rules and regulations give us the authority to issue a stop work order if a rule is being broken. A rule was broken. The rule stopped being broken. The reason that it got reported to L&I is because we asked one of our experts to take a look at the site to evaluate the quality of the work that had been done in tree removal. And as a part of that, he inquired with L&I as to whether they had authority to be acting as a subcontractor, and it was determined that they did not, and that instituted the investigation. I was not informed by L&I that there was an investigation. They told me today that they are not required to tell me that there is an investigation, and they did not require that the work be stopped at the site in order to conduct the investigation. Just as all of the homeowners who are currently in the valley have the right to tranquil enjoyment, as it's described in the rules and regulations of the property, everyone who's living in a house now, at one time, someone had to build that house. And every lot in Sudden Valley that has been platted by the county is deemed buildable by the county. It might require that rock be jackhammered out of there. It might require that they get a variance to the setback in order to site it on the lot, but every lot is considered to be buildable. Some lots will never be developed because they're buildable, but it would cost too much to build there. That's just the practical nature of it. But as a homeowners association, we have a responsibility to everyone who owns land here, not just the people who own land with houses currently on it. And so our rules and regulations take that into account. It's the county and the state who are required to ensure that the contractors who do their work here are appropriately qualified. Our process has been, for many years, that we check the credentials and licensing and insurance of the primary contractor, and that they are responsible for hiring appropriately licensed subcontractors. It is not, we do not have the staff and to go around and check that everyone is licensed. However, given the circumstances of last week, I have instituted a change in our process, and we will now require anyone doing tree work, which is inherently dangerous, to give us their to provide their license, bond, insurance, and LNI information. Because tree removal does have the potential to impact adjacent lots. We also need to discuss as a community and potentially add additional rules and regulations around the need to submit a tree removal plan, not just which trees you're taking down, but how you're taking them down. The rules and regulations say that we can require that trees be taken down in specific ways, piece by piece, but we have no mechanism to consider that or discuss that with the builders. Another thing to consider is that when builders build in Sudden Valley, they have many challenges that they don't have anywhere else. They have a watershed window for disturbing the soil that goes from June 1st through September 30th. During that time, they must do all the work necessary to get the foundations dug and built out and ready to be poured. They can't do anything that requires moving earth after that time. So this is a very busy season, and it is intense in some of the neighborhoods where building is going on. And it's a constant juggling or balancing act between the rights of those who want to build and the rights of those who have already built. And it is not perfect. But we took the actions that we had the authority to take, and we believe that they will lead to improved safety.
If I may, as I do appreciate the response to the issue. What I do have a question about, for one, is now as to why this isn't public knowledge, or I guess knowledge to the ACC until just now. And there's a little bit of circumventing the issue at hand, which is not that, there are houses that have been built. Our house was built back in 72. There are some houses next to us that were built in the 90s. I understand that at some point these houses didn't just pop up out of the ground. The issue at hand is that if permits in any way, shape, or form are being granted, which is an approval process, because without those, the building cannot happen here from Sudden Valley, or the ACC, I guess I should say. But without those permits, building can't happen. Now, this building has already proven itself at this point, and the contractor, for not checking the bona fides of the subs, has proven itself to be far more than a liability. It is absolutely problematic in real terms, not hypotheticals. And the added pressure of the time frame, the imposed fines, the everything that is going on is a little too, like, it January 1st, and is pretty far away. And the immediate not sanctions, but the immediate rules that you've put into effect, Joanne, as much as they are appreciated, it doesn't take away the initial question, like, who, if you are allowed to give permits and then all of a sudden the onus is on the state, the county, like was said, and the hands are tied, then what is the purpose of having a permitting process through the ACC if there is nothing that can happen when something like that happens? This build, and right now this contractor, there should be a stop work until the entirety of the LNI investigation and audit are complete at the very least. And
Steve, I appreciate that you feel strongly about this, and I share your commitment to making sure that I follow through on appropriate fines and circumstances and consequences for the builder that was involved in producing that accident. This meeting is primarily to get feedback on the changes And I'd like to move on to the next comment if I can. We did cover this situation and inform the people here. It is a developing situation and it involves legalities that are beyond the authority of Sudden Valley to discuss. So let's move on to the next comment. Hans, are you there?
Yes, my name is Hans Kraus. We're building at the site of 2 Loganberry Lane. And for a while, the presentation did not have sound, so I may have missed some of the important points. So my question maybe has already been answered. But regarding the January 1st, 2025 additional changes, are they applicable to new applications submitted after January 1st? That is my question.
Yes.
Okay, so just to be clear, it does not affect applications that have already been approved or construction that has already begun.
That is correct. And that is why we're giving the sort of the grace period for people who are in the planning stages to react appropriately. It's very expensive to design a home, and to have to design it and then change it would be burdensome on a homeowner. And so we're giving as much advance notice as possible regarding these changes.
Okay, and then second question is, one of the changes, and I think the slides were very clear, so I appreciate that. One of the changes was that homeowners are required to maintain the driveway culverts. I have no problem with that. I think it's a good idea. The problem may occur that some homeowners will not do it, and it will not be enforced by the HOA. Will that also apply to existing homes that are already built? In other words, is that only apply to new applications and houses currently being built, or will that apply retroactively to any existing homes? Because I see some culverts throughout Sudden Valley that seem to be in serious disrepair.
Yeah. So that's a great question, because that particular requirement is about maintenance and not about new builds. It would be applicable to all culverts, whether or not they were built after January 1st.
Okay, and then what is the consequence if someone does not perform that maintenance? I'm assuming that Sudden Valley will do the maintenance and then bill the homeowner for it?
The structure for that sort of approach already exists in our rules and regulations, but this would be a new violation because it is a new requirement, and it would necessitate the board to approve a fine for that particular violation. So that's why we're out getting public comment and why this is such a lengthy process, because it's not just, retyping the document. You have to get the approval, you have to get the input, you have to make sure that there's an infrastructure for enforcement as well as putting the regulations into place. And so that would be an additional step. That will come once we solidify and firm up what changes are going to be proposed.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I have one comment, and that is one of the other gentlemen mentioned that about building a fence, a privacy fence between 2 homes. And he mentioned a 10-foot no man's land, I guess the word that was used. My interpretation of the setbacks would be that it would probably be more like a 14-foot setback or 14-foot no man's land, because the setbacks in Sudden Valley apply to the eaves of the house. And typically the eave is about 1.5 to 2 feet, or perhaps even more. So that no man's land would even be wider.
Thank you. That makes sense. Are there additional comments? I'm sorry, Ann. Jay White, are you there? Jay? Knock twice if you can hear us, Jay. Are we moving on to someone? Joe Murphy, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Hi, Joe Murphy, 12 Windward Lane. And I just had a real quick comment about the last one there about the maintained driveway culverts. And I do think it's a good idea. I just wonder how many people are going to basically inherit one that's in a, disrepair, right? I've been here a little over 3 years and have yet to see any culvert maintenance or even ditch maintenance on a lot of the places that I would have considered Sudden Valley responsibility. So now in January, we're going to turn over that responsibility of disrepair and someone's going to get slapped with a pretty big bill possibly. I just wanted to hear if you had any, thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. Over the last 18 months, we've invested more than $500,000 in cleaning culverts and ditches. And we have, as an association, a continuing commitment to maintaining our drainage system in a way that it hasn't been for many decades. And we do this in ways that are visible and some ways that are invisible. For example, we spent about $16,000 this year, plan to spend about that much on street sweeping. Why? Because it takes organic matter out of the ditches and it helps to keep them clear. So in addition to the actual maintenance that we've paid for on the ditches and culverts, we're also taking many steps in maintenance that will help to keep the ditches clear of vegetation. But beyond that, I think it's important to note the current wording of the requirements around culverts. The current requirement says that within the Sudden Valley Road right-of-way, currently SVCA is responsible for culvert maintenance, including keeping ditches and ends of pipes clear of debris. And wherever we have addressed a ditch situation, that's exactly what we've done. We've dug it out to restore it. And in some places we put in armoring. But if you continue on here, it says, should replacement or repair of any damaged or improperly installed culvert become necessary, it will be the responsibility of the property owner. And so that's not changing. So if you're buying a property, that driveway culvert is part of the property. It was installed at the point of construction. And if it needs to be repaired or replaced, it's your responsibility. So maintenance is just keeping it clear so that water can flow through it. Now, if there's a problem with drainage, and we see that sometimes, a heavy rainfall can move soil or vegetative debris into a ditch or a culvert, creating a blockage quickly. And then you start to see the ditches fill and water crossing the streets. In many instances, last fall, we saw that happening and we immediately responded, and we have a piece of equipment that can clean culverts that are 12 inches or less in diameter and less than 15 feet, I believe, is the limitation. And we do clean out driveway culverts when it's an emergency like that. But as a homeowner, I think everyone should be aware that if that culvert isn't maintained and it does need to be replaced, that's your cost. So relying on us to do emergency maintenance seems like a bad choice. So hopefully that addresses your comment.
Somewhat. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there other folks online who would like to make a comment? Charles, are you there? Charles, are you able to hear us? Charles? Anybody else online?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Hello, Charles, is that you?
Yep. Sorry about that. Charles, I live in 19 Sunflower Circle, and I wasn't going to ask any questions, and then you guys were having that last discussion about culverts. And, it kind of falls in line with the previous question, but I just had this secondary thought. Most of the culverts that I've seen this so far, or seen the examples of, are culverts that are at the end of somebody's driveway. Is there going to be any delineation between the culverts that are at the end of somebody's driveway versus the culverts that have been installed that go underneath the roads?
Yeah, there is a big distinction. There's a bunch of culverts. There's more than 350 of them that are not part of any homeowner's responsibility. They move throughout the association and they move stormwater, often in large quantities. Those culverts remain the responsibility of Sudden Valley to maintain. But the driveway culverts, because they're installed by the homeowner when the building is constructed, and because the homeowner owns them and would need to replace them in order to ensure access to their home, we're suggesting that it's the property owner who should maintain them. And that is in line with what the county requires as well. But all those other culverts, the ones that aren't driveway culverts, they remain the responsibility of Sudden Valley. They were all inspected and cleaned last year, and there is now a very detailed order of maintenance on those culverts. So for the next 10 years, there's a rotation where we will go back to them and make sure that they're clear and maintain and replace them as needed.
Thank you. That answered my question, and thank you for all of the work you guys have been doing on just tonight's presentation.
Well, thank you. Anyone else online? Well, see if, yeah, just give them, sure. VJ, are you there? If anyone is left online that has a comment, please let us know now, because we're almost at the end of our time. In fact, Mac, are you there? Okay. They took it down. Excellent. Barbara, did you?
That's been doing the culverts has been really quite amazing.
Well, thank you. Great feedback. All right. Well, thank you again. I started by thanking you for your participation. Thanks again. And we'll post all of this tomorrow morning. Thank you.